Hello, and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer. And all week long, we have been talking about transportation, which has been really exciting for us. We've had some people in the aviation field. We've had people in the logistics field. We had CDOT on earlier. We also we had a gentleman come join us, and he got to talk about curriculum that he's doing for the Community College of Aurora on a logistics program that they're starting, which is really exciting. And I am so excited to have with me today. I have Kelly Brough. She is the president and CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, and Tony Milo, who is the executive director of Colorado Contractors Association. And these two have some awesome initiatives for transportation here in Colorado that we're going to get into later in the show. But right now I'm going to take a minute and plug a little bit of an event that we have coming up here at Colorado Business Roundtable. We partnered with the Colorado State University Global Campus to bring people the Cybersecurity Roundtable, and that's happening on May 10th. That is Thursday, May 10th from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we're very excited. We have our keynote address from Vance Brown. He's the CEO of the National Cybersecurity Center. And then we're going to have a panelist discussion, and we have people coming from AT&T and IBM and Apple, New Cloud Networks, the Colorado Workforce Development Council, and Microsoft. So we're very excited for that event to happen. And if you have not signed up already, please visit cobrt.com/events. Click on May 10th and you can sign up right there. And that will be taking place on the CSU Global Campus, actually, right on their campus. And so we're very excited for that. And also, if you have not had a chance to check out any of our transportation shows yet this week, please visit cobrt.com/radio-podcast. You can see all the videos. You can listen to all the podcasts. We have those all available for you. And we will have this show there tomorrow morning as well. But welcome. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about transportation today. Kelly, how's it going?
It's going great, unless you have to drive anywhere in the state of Colorado, and then it's very challenging. You know, I want to give you some context, and thank you, Alex, for having us on, so we could just talk about this issue to kind of frame why are so many people focused on transportation in the state of Colorado, and in particular, you know, your ability to move around as an individual. And I recently saw some numbers that I think you'll be interested in. In the last 20 years, we've almost doubled the number of vehicle miles traveled that we're all moving around on our roads, and yet we haven't increased our investment. And so the result of that is per capita, per person investment in our roads, in our transportation system, is about half what it was in 1991.
Wow.
So when you ask the question, why is my experience going so poorly? That's exactly why. And when we ask Coloradans, you know, how frustrated are you? And you have 77% of them say, you've got to put more money into this system.
Yeah.
You know that they deserve the chance in November to say, I really do want a solution before me, and I want you to address this because it's affecting the quality of my life.
Absolutely. We drive here, right? Denver, we are working on our public transportation system. We have a long way to go on that. But we're drivers here, you know, especially if you're driving between Denver and Colorado Springs or Denver and Fort Collins, right? Our bigger cities, and even out into the rural areas. We spend a lot of time in our cars, and we're spending even more time than we need to nowadays because of the traffic, right?
It's so true.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Tony's part of a group that issues an annual trip report.
Right.
And that's a perfect transition to give you context what it's costing you because you're spending so much time in your car.
Right,
Yeah.
Kelly, yes. Good to be with you, Alex. Yeah, so the Trip Report's a national organization that measures the impact of congestion and poorly maintained roads on the motorist. And just last year, about a year ago, this month, they did a report in Colorado, and they demonstrated that it's costing Colorado $6.8 billion a year in congestion and poorly maintained roads. You know, every driver in the metro area is spending over $2,000 a year a piece in just sitting in traffic, wear and tear on their vehicles, you know, delayed goods and services that are sitting in traffic. So there's a huge hidden tax that every Coloradan is paying right now because of our lack of investment in infrastructure.
Well, and I know that Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, as we lovingly call it, their budget is only about $1 billion a year, and so we're talking $6.8 billion, right? That's huge deficit right there.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And we have a pretty high-performing Colorado Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
You know, other departments around the country come here to find out what innovations we're focused on. And I think the reason we do is because these guys have had to do everything they possibly can to keep us up and running as much as possible with basically half the amount of dollars that they had in 1991.
Which is insane to think about, right? 1991, it's 2018.
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's
Yeah.
well over 20 years ago. And inflation, come on. The
It's
cost,
true.
housing costs, right?
Yeah, if you look at those. I also think that we're missing the opportunity for investments that can significantly improve our lives. So where I don't sit in traffic driving to work, or cars that are part of a fleet of a system in a company aren't stuck in traffic, but they actually can get to your house to put in your cable or to fix whatever issue you have. And then one we don't talk about very often is we have the smartest, most educated workforce, second most educated workforce. We are the smartest, though, Alex, let's be clear.
Absolutely.
We have the second most educated workforce in the country, though. And a big part of the attraction for that workforce here is the quality of life. And that means we want to experience our mountains and our plains. And so the other thing that Tony and I have spent a great deal on is finding a statewide solution. This isn't a metro problem. This is a statewide problem, and we should solve it as a state and solve it together.
So that leads me to a little bit of this initiative that you have going on. You've mentioned this hidden sales tax that we're paying, right? Does this tie in with the initiative? We want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I can
go ahead.
I can.
Whoever wants to start.
So there is a hidden tax right now that everyone's experiencing, and they're experiencing it in a number of ways. It's wear and tear on the vehicle. It's time sitting in traffic. It's also the unmeasured cost of the reduced quality of life, the frustration, the road rage. You get out of work late and you miss your kid's soccer game. How do you put a cost on that?
Exactly.
We can't. So the Coloradans are paying a big cost, even more than the numbers show, in just like Kelly said, just impacting quality of life. So we're looking at this at a number of different levels. Right now we're working to get as much money as we possibly can from the general fund, the taxes that Coloradans are already paying. There's a bill that we are all supportive of, Senate Bill 1.
Okay.
It's passed the Senate. It's being considered in the House right now, and that is that bill would commit about $250 million a year from the state general fund, from taxes that are already being paid by Coloradans, and that would put it into transportation.
Can I ask real quick, why hasn't this been considered before? I mean, we've clearly had the same budget since 1991.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we know of why it wasn't introduced before?
Colorado's budget is tight, and legislators will tell you they have a lot of competing priorities. And as Coloradans, we know that. We know education is important. We know there's housing challenges, there's healthcare challenges. So the reason is because there's been a lot of pressure. This year, there has been increased revenue coming into the state. And it's the combination of two things. One is some of the economic success we've had. Mm-hmm. So they're expecting people will pay more in their income tax this year. The second one, though, comes because of the change in federal law. In how you pay your income tax federally, will actually bring more revenue into the state system. But that is not ongoing revenue. I just remind you that change at the federal level is a 10-year change. Mm-hmm. So what we know is the $250 million Tony's talking about, we think that you could count on it as Coloradans for 10 years unless the federal laws are changed again. And so we do think because of that, there should be a significant commitment of those new revenues to transportation right now.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that this hidden sales tax that you're talking about isn't actually like a hidden sales tax, but it's definitely things that we certainly aren't thinking about, right? When I'm screaming and yelling in my car and I'm mad because I'm going to miss an appointment of some sort, right? I'm going to be late for lunch that I had a meeting with.
Well, and you used more gas because you're sitting in traffic, you're in more accidents. Those are real costs. So while they're not a tax, they're real costs to you.
Absolutely.
And if we can invest in our system, we can actually reduce those costs to you by asking you to instead, why don't you support a sales tax that allows us to make improvements to the entire transportation system so that you don't have those experiences of accidents to your car and reduction, paying more for your gas because you're burning it while you're not going anywhere. And so that's why we think it's the right thing to do. I think our coalition statewide is about 70 organizations. It's growing, though, so maybe it's bigger. This is a group of coalitions of public, private, nonprofits working together to figure out what's the right answer for Colorado. And this group is focused on sales tax for November as the proposal that they want to take forward, we want to take forward. And I think it's important to think about why. Why are we focused on a sales tax in November? A number of taxes that Coloradans would pay, income tax, property tax, vehicle registration, those are taxes that residents alone bear the burden. Nobody else is going to help with those taxes. Only we pay those. What we like about sales tax and what our voters in Colorado like about a sales tax is there's over 80 million people who visit our state every year, and they're going to help pay for that tax and help pay for our roads, and we actually think that's fair, which means it also takes a little burden off of us. So a small sales tax can go a long way. So we're looking at between a 0.5% increase in sales tax, 0.62 or a full 1% increase as the coalition tries to consider what's the right amount of money. And the reason we haven't picked one of them yet is because, as Tony said, we're still working at the Capitol to finalize how much can we get from the current revenues that we're all paying. Because if we can get more from the state, then we can ask voters for less money in November. If the state has less to put in, we're going to have to ask voters for a little bit more. So the final decision will be made probably by mid-May. We'll know exactly which initiative for sales tax we're bringing forward.
That's amazing. So this sounds really great, right? And while you're telling me about the cost that I have, is it going to even out, right, with those hidden sales tax?
Well, nothing we would propose to voters will raise $6.8 billion a year, and that's what you're paying right now. So you are going to save a lot of money by investing the right way and putting our money in the roads where they should be, reducing accidents, improving safety, reducing all the healthcare costs associated with that, saving your gas, saving your time.
Yeah, just when you talk about what we really need to make a difference and for the voters and the motorists to see improvement, we've set the goal to raise $750 million a year, and that's, as Kelly said, we want to see how much we can get out of the general fund. Maybe it's 150, maybe it's 200 million, maybe it's 250 million a year, and then we will take the initiative that will raise the additional money that will get us to that goal of about $750 million a year. And the important thing to note is that that money will be distributed between CDOT, locals, and the cities as well. So it won't just be the CDOT program, because we have a transportation system that is made up of state roads, county roads, and city streets. So our initiatives will provide funding to all three of those, plus a multimodal component that will offer the regions the ability to add multimodal options. The portion of the money that will go to CDOT will enable them to bond about $3.5 to $4 billion right up front to address the most critical state projects. And there's projects all across the state on the CDOT project list. They'll be able to accelerate those projects, and that way motorists will start seeing benefits right away.
Yeah.
Well, and I like this. You can invest it into the multimodal, right? Which is something that I believe Colorado is trying to get there with their public transportation system. We were speaking off air about the airport, right? We finally have public transportation at the airport, and I myself am an employee at DIA. It's a part-time job that I have, and I don't take the public transportation out there because my company already pays for me to have a parking spot out there. So I drive to work. And I I would love it if you guys could get me in touch with the right people to get this.
Yeah, we'll solve that for you, Alex, as
Wonderful.
well.
Thank you.
We'll get the money passed in November. We'll fund our roads, and we'll help you get a transit pass.
Exactly. Next on the
That'll
list,
be one less car on I-70.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's something to think about. Chicago, definitely, their DOT has looked into incentivizing with the airport to get people to take the public transportation system rather than driving out.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples of the multimodal that have been hugely successful here. Our Colorado Department of Transportation runs a bus service called Bustang. I don't know if you've heard of it. Probably a lot of your listeners have, but it's hugely successful. It goes from here up into the mountains. You can go to Colorado Springs. They have Wi-Fi on it. A lot of business people like to get on it when they're doing business down there instead of driving because they can work the whole way.
Yeah.
And then catch the Bustang back up into Denver. And so it's kind of cool, and those kinds of projects would only be able to expand.
Right.
And what I love about them is they're directly focused on taking people from where they are to where they're trying to get. And so they're directly meeting the need instead of asking people to really change their lives significantly to make it more convenient for the service provider. They're meeting our needs directly. And so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's very neat. I had not heard of this, but that's fantastic.
It's also a cool name, right?
Bustang? I'm all over it. Yeah, I've got it circled over here. I'm ready to check that out. And you mentioned that it takes you to the mountains too, right?
Yeah.
That's very exciting. So we know that there's a big difference between the Front Range, right, and our outer western slope. Do we have any idea what multimodal would look like for our smaller cities or smaller mountain towns?
We do.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it, Tony?
No, that's a great question because a lot of people, when they think multimodal or they think transit, they think, well, that's just inner city train service. But, we have members of our coalition, City of Lone Tree, City of Vail, Grand Junction. Their voters have said they want, bus service. Dial rides for senior citizens, bike paths. So there's full flexibility in these dollars, and it's up to the regions to decide what they need and what will serve their population the best. And those local regions, those cities and the counties and the metropolitan or the regional planning agencies know best. Mm-hmm. And so they'll have full flexibility with those dollars to offer a wide range of mobility options.
Yeah. It is cool. So I'm going to give you an example because I heard a really cool one in rural Colorado when we were meeting, just talking about how do you make sure that each community gets to define exactly what's most important to them. And what we said is we just think when you get your percentage and every city gets 20% of whatever funds are raised by voters, that your local community should say, here's the list you get. So even before you vote, you know exactly what your city intends to spend it on. One example that came up consistently was there's a real struggle in rural Colorado to ensure senior citizens are getting to critical appointments, from doctors to getting their groceries to, and that they need more shared kind of van or bus service to ensure they're meeting their seniors' needs. And they saw these funds as being able to help them do it. That is exactly what multimodal is intended to do, right?
Yeah.
Solve those kinds of problems and bring 3 or 4 counties together to do it where it's less expensive than if you each do your own.
That's fascinating and awesome, right? I love that you've got so many people working together. Again, you said 70 organizations are involved in this. Yeah. That's fantastic. I know that transportation is something we're very passionate about here with the Colorado Business Roundtable. We actually had a Moving Colorado Forward event last month, and it was pretty successful. I feel like we got a lot of interesting ideas out there and things like that. So this initiative, you have Senate Bill 1 that has passed in the Senate. We're waiting on the House to vote. When is that vote coming in? Do we know?
I think it should be next week in House Transportation.
That's what I thought. I thought it was pretty close.
It's going to have to be pretty quick.
Yeah, they're running out of time.
We got to go. So,
we've got about a week and a half left.
That being said, what are the next steps? So let's say it passes, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's not going to. I I'll keep my fingers crossed,
Yeah.
but I have a pretty good feeling this is going to pass.
Yeah, I think the question will be what is in it after the House is done, how much money is actually dedicated to transportation. There's kind of two pieces in the bill now. There's currently $495 million that's one time to spend on transportation. And I don't think we've talked about this yet, but CDOT actually has a $9 billion project list statewide. That's a published list. You can see it on their website. You can see exactly what the priority projects are and why they're so critical. So CDOT, one upside for voters is whether the state provides funding or when we get past a ballot issue in November, voters can see exactly what they're going to get statewide. But if you have a $9 billion list, if you put $495 million in,
it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. Our joke was, CDOT, you should pick very carefully the project you're going to do because we should all love it.
Yeah.
But it helps.
Water parks for everyone.
Yeah. It helps, though, right? And we're grateful for it. And then the second piece is how much ongoing funding do they put in the operating budget? And that's probably where we're paying much closer attention. CDOT doesn't receive money to even maintain its current roads. So all of this discussion is about all the things they're not able to even implement, put in place. There's also huge maintenance. They can't keep I-70 open with their current funds, and that's a huge challenge for the West Slope, where Grand Junction can't get back and forth. So we know that why Senate Bill 1 is so critical is that really is maintenance. It allows CDOT to operate at a really top level, from plowing our roads to filling the potholes, all of those kinds of issues. And then the second part of it is, what do we do long term? Because I think Tony really highlighted well. You don't know, I don't know, when I'm on a state highway, when I'm on a county road, and when I've moved to a city street. I do know I expect all three to work seamlessly together. And so our funding strategy in November is to say CDOT needs money, so do cities, so do counties, and so do regions. And if we don't do all of those, the reality is you can improve brilliantly CDOT's list, and you're still stuck, and that last mile still isn't going to work for you. And so I think the challenge we have before us is to get that Senate bill done and passed and start CDOT with some funding, and then to work with our voters to say, we should finish this effort and ensure you get a great system, not just one piece of it.
I love that. These are great solutions here. Obviously, you probably were motivated by the fact that you were sitting in traffic, but how did this all begin? Where was the inkling that this was the best solution?
Oofta.
It's been a long, bumpy road to get here.
Yeah, I mean, some members of the coalition, I think fairly would say for the last 4 or 5 years have been working diligently statewide to have this conversation about what the right solution is. And so a lot of us feel like, I think we feel pretty confident because of the breadth and the depth of the people who've influenced the policy, that we're making a policy that works for all of Colorado.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I feel like you guys are absolutely on the right path here to do that. We have about a minute and a half here. I would love to get more into this into the next segment. But we're going to talk about your roots a little bit and how you got started and how you wound up here. But last words right now, you're on the Senate floor, you're trying to get the House to vote on it. What are you going to say?
Investing in transportation changes people's lives in Colorado, and they deserve to have their lives improved right now.
Yeah. And you?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, in all of the polling that we've done, we've seen over the last 5 years, every year, transportation has moved up the ranking of the most important, when voters list their most important aspects of the state budget, and transportation is now #1 in the minds of voters, and so we really need to address it.
Awesome. Maybe we can get you guys on that Senate floor on Monday, and they'll pass it right away for you.
We'll both be there.
Yes, I'm sure you will. I am hoping that happens for you. We will be right back here in about 5 minutes. Stay with us. Join us at cobrt.com/live. We will be there. Just hang out for a few minutes. And in the meantime, check out Denver Metro Chamber's website. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I'm so excited. All week long, I've been able to talk transportation, and as frustrating, as we all can agree that it is in Colorado right now. Sitting in traffic, I yell a lot of profanities, but it's the only place I do it. So I get to get those out before I get to work. So I'm not angry by the time I get here. But I have with me Kelly Brough. She is the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce President and CEO. That is a big title and an amazing job for you. And I know that you mentioned earlier you had several bosses and a lot of people to answer to, but I thank you for taking time out to join me today to talk about transportation, along with Tony Milo, who's the Executive Director of Colorado Contractors Association, who's also very well versed in the transportation world. And so last segment, we got to talk about this initiative that you've got. We've got the Senate Bill 1 Senate Bill 1. It went through the Senate, got approved. We're going to have it in the House, and we're hoping to get that approved next week. And I know you guys will be there and pushing for it, and I will hope for you as well. But one of the things that we missed in the last segment, because I got so excited about this initiative, I need it fixed today. We missed a little bit of the background and where you guys came from in your careers. And so, Kelly, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of your background, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. This is where you wish you didn't have so many jobs. So I'll just do my last one so I don't look like such a slacker. So before I went to the Chamber, I've been at the Chamber for about 8.5 years, not that I'm counting, and it has been a great job. But just prior to that, I was John Hickenlooper's Chief of Staff when he was Mayor of Denver. And what I love most about the last two roles I've had is one was obviously public sector, and the other now is representing the private sector. And what I realize is the issues are exactly the same, the most critical issues that we face. So solving issues like education and how do you improve the health of the residents of Colorado, in that case Denver. How do you address our transportation needs? They're all the same set of issues. They're complex, they're hard, and they require that all three sectors work together, public, private, and nonprofit, to find solutions that work for everybody and that are sustainable. And so it's interesting to me that as I kind of came across that intersection of those issues, I'm still working with the same people on the same critical issues, finding solutions. And I love that about Colorado, where I feel like no matter what our background, many of us have worked in a different sector. We bring an appreciation for the challenges of that sector, and we bring a creativity to solutions. And I think that's really positive. And I'm seeing it as we're working on transportation now, because we have 41 Metro mayors through the Metro Mayors Caucus sitting right there with us, helping us identify, along with all these business leaders, what's the right answer.
Yeah.
So the background has really helped me, I think, have perspective and respect for that it's going to take all of us to solve these issues.
Yes, definitely. And you almost said it, and one of the things that Coloradans are fantastic about is collaborating, right?
Yeah.
No matter what the issue is, education, health, transportation, we are fantastic at collaborating, getting the right people in the right room to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
True.
Yes, I love that you are contributing to that as well. I know that Jeff Wasden, president of Colorado Business Roundtable, COBRT as we call it, he's very passionate about this collaboration, right?
Yeah.
We named the show Connect and Collaborate for that reason.
Perfect.
Yes. And Tony, give us your background. How did you end up at the Colorado Contractors Association and in charge of this initiative?
Sure, Alex. Thanks for the opportunity. I've been fortunate enough to represent the infrastructure construction industry for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And, the great thing about infrastructure and representing those who build it is that everybody needs it. Everybody needs infrastructure. It's so important. We like to say, our members bring infrastructure to life. Mm-hmm. And what that means is every life depends on good infrastructure, whether it's a good transportation system to get kids to school and to get yourself to work and to get up to the mountains to enjoy all the reasons that we live in Colorado, or it's healthy drinking water, a wastewater system, broadband internet, telephone, electric, gas. All of those things are built by the infrastructure construction industry, and I'm very lucky to be able to represent those contractors because what we do, it does impact the lives of every Coloradan, and so it's an important job, it's an important responsibility, and it's just the contractors who I represent are private citizens. They're Coloradans. They're entrepreneurs. They're people who, a lot of them started their companies in their basements and their garages. So it's a great industry of hardworking people, and they employ about 60,000 Coloradans. Yeah. Right here in Colorado, this is one industry that can't be sent overseas. It can't be can't be contracted out. We hire Coloradans to work here and put infrastructure in place. So. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be part of that.
Absolutely, and keep it right back in the state, right?
You know what I love though is when you're with the pride that contractors take in the work, they'll never forget the bridge they built, the highway they put, and every time you go by it, if you're with them, they'll point it out, and there's such a pride, and I think that's such a beautiful quality, right? Here we are working with a bunch of people who deeply care about their state, and they want to contribute to making it an even better state.
Absolutely, and we're going to have to get you back in the studio for the next hot button issue, which is this affordable housing, right? And we got the Central 70 project we got some housing issues there, so I'm going to bring you back on. So I need you to commit to that. No, I'm
absolutely.
Just kidding.
We'll both be here because we've both been involved in the affordable housing issue, and it's critically important to Colorado.
Yeah,
no question.
It's almost as important as transportation. Almost. But we talked a little bit in the commercial break here. So interestingly enough, when I think transportation, and it could be because I've lived solely in Denver, right? When I moved to Colorado, I came here. I have a sister who lives in Colorado Springs. So that's where I spend the majority of my time in Colorado. I do the ski towns and things like that. But apparently rural Colorado, I would like to say that correctly, rural Colorado is really interested in this initiative, yeah?
Yeah, very much. There's 3 business groups, and they represent, I'm going to tell you their names, and their names associate with the number of counties that they represent business interests in. So there's Club 20. This is an organization out of Grand Junction representing 20 counties on the west slope. There's Action 22 in southeast Colorado, 22 counties. And then there's Pro 15 representing 15 counties in northeastern Colorado. And combined with the Denver Metro Chamber, we cover every county in the state. And so when you put the 4 of us in a room and we start to talk about what's the best policy, I really feel like you bring this vastly different set of needs and interests. And just like you, Alex, we all think of it from our point of view, what our daily experience is. And what really struck me is how we raised the money really mattered to rural Colorado, and for very good reason. And so I want to share with you some of the reasons why sales tax was picked as the best way to fund. I mentioned earlier there's 80 million tourists. They help you pay for it. That's a really good reason. But there's some other reasons. The economic success in our state has really been experienced in the metro area and along the Front Range. And all of Colorado hasn't had the same kind of economic success yet, although we're working hard to make sure it shows up in their communities as well. But that means how we fund our roads really requires that we pick funding sources that don't put an undue burden on those who haven't had economic success like we've had. So sales tax, about 60% of sales tax that is collected in the state of Colorado is collected right here in the metro area. And in the proposal that we'd put before voters, about 41% of that will come right back here, which means we're making sure that more money is going out into rural Colorado to help support them at a time when they really need us. And the truth is, it's in our interest, too, to do that, because the workers that we've attracted here, they want to get out into rural Colorado. They want to get into the mountains and the plains. They want to experience the rest of the state. And we need them to see that they can get there and they can get back to work and enjoy their weekend as much as their week.
Yeah.
So we felt like sales tax is the perfect solution to recognize we have an obligation. And it's a way to say to rural Colorado, we see ourselves as being in this all together.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And, that is the dream, though, right? Living out in the mountain town and driving into the city when you can, or taking that public transportation, doing your work on the way.
Yeah.
So we're slowly getting there, and I love that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you guys, we talk a lot about money, and there's always that question, right? Can voters count on the fact that this money is actually going to go where the bill says it's going to go?
Yeah, that's a great question,
Yeah.
and it's very critically important that
Yes.
we ensure that this money does go where we say it's going to go, because we're entrusted with this money, and we have to make a promise to the voters. And so the way these initiatives are written, this money will go into what's called the Highway Users Tax Fund, which is actually a constitutionally protected fund that has to be spent on transportation purposes.
Okay.
So once the money enters into this Highway Users Tax Fund, which is right now mostly funded by gas taxes and vehicle registration fees, we would then add this sales tax component as another revenue stream into the Highway Users Tax Fund. It would then be divided between CDOT, cities, counties, and this multimodal fund, but it would be protected from any other being used for anything other than transportation.
Yeah. So the legislature couldn't decide one day that there was something else they felt the money should go to. They couldn't change their minds. There's no other approach that dedicates and guarantees to voters that the money will be there. Even if we get funding from Senate Bill 1, there's no guarantee that next year we won't lose that funding. This would be the only strategy where we could guarantee to voters this money must go to transportation. There's a second piece that I really like, and my members, we have 3,000 chamber members, that they really like, and that is there's a project list, and there's local priorities, and you know before you vote exactly what you're going to get for this money. And so not only are you guaranteed it must go to transportation, but you are guaranteed what projects you're going to get from the Colorado Department of Transportation. And I think that really increases all of our confidence that when you say yes, you're getting exactly what you said you wanted when you said yes to this tax increase.
Yeah. So it's not 2,000 pages of unreadable text, right?
No, ma'am.
Yes.
It's a list, and you can see I-25, and the project I care about is there, or I-70, or Colorado Boulevard, whatever your issue is, you can see where it is on the list and if you're going to get it.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Transparency is key when it comes to issues like this, and I think I have complete faith this is going to roll through, and I'm very excited for it. Why do locals support it so much?
Yeah, I think that was a critical part, right? We talked earlier about the system has to be funded, not just the state, but also counties and municipalities. And one of the issues that came up is municipalities and counties have different priorities throughout the state. And so how do you draft this in a way that recognizes all those differing priorities? And what we realized is you give them flexibility. You do not require that they spend it except on their local priorities. So you could be a county that says, the most important issue in our county is actually this state highway, and we're going to further some of these projects and get more done on it. Or you could say it's a pedestrian sidewalks, which we also heard that there's real challenges in rural Colorado for people to be able to walk in a small community. But you get to decide as a local community. So nobody at the state tells you, nobody can redirect your funds, and you're guaranteed that they're coming back into your community. As a matter of fact, I think some numbers were run to just look at the current budgets on cities and counties. The smallest increase that any city will receive is a 77% increase on their current transportation funding if they approve this tax increase.
The smallest.
The smallest. Wow. The smallest increase in counties was 54% if they approve this tax increase. So every single city and county will receive additional funds to address their local needs.
Right, and that's a great point, and it's amazing to see over the last 4 or 5 years since we've embarked on this effort, how thoughts have changed. Because when we first started talking about this, the conventional wisdom was, well, you can't touch the sales tax because that's the local government's way to raise funds for what they want to do. Now the municipalities are our biggest proponents, and because they see the benefit of that's going to come to them at a local level, and they also think the improving the statewide system is just as important. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, and I want to make sure that I'm phrasing this the right way. You mentioned that the tax reform, right, is good for 10 years, federally speaking. So a lot of the funds that we are looking at for this are coming from that. We realized that we were not prepared, right, for the amount of people that have come to Colorado. transportation kind of got more impaired by not being prepared for that. How long do you think we can go with this budget and be okay? Or is there going to be a point where it's too much money for transportation? I don't think that's ever going to be a thing. But just in case, I mean, do we have any backup plans for that?
Yeah, so this actually would only be a proposed tax for 20 years, and it would go away unless voters said, golly, we think we need to put more in.
Yeah.
And so you'd have to make another case. And that would allow voters to both ensure they got what they were promised.
Yeah.
And they either could say, yeah, we'll take some more of that, or if they didn't feel it worked, they could say no. But it would not be forever.
Okay.
It's only for 20 years.
That's exciting. And I like that we can bring it back to the table and readjust and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What about this attracting businesses out in rural Colorado? Again, back with that, which I just find it so fascinating that they're so on board with this. And it's exciting, right? If you're going to get Colorado on board, you need your rural cities and counties involved. But there seems to be an attraction of business out that way, right? If we can get some transportation funding. You want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'll give you a great example. Grand Junction for the outdoor industry is like a perfect mecca for almost everything that industry could need. And yet what we have to be able to do is say that the transportation there can fully meet their needs, that they can get in and out, that they're confident that I-70 will be open so they can move their products. As a matter of fact, I would argue Grand Junction is in a position to effectively compete against Salt Lake City all day long against this industry if we make the right investments and keep positioning them. And, you know, they have Colorado Mesa University that is a fabulous institution. I'm a little biased. I'm on their board of trustees. But they're helping build a workforce to exactly meet this opportunity. And so I feel like you make an investment like this and you're positioning them. But the truth is, this is true even for us in the metro area. You know, Utah is a great competitor economically. They are really competing against Colorado, and they're doing it with intention. Utah has probably one of the most conservative legislatures in the country. They have raised their gas tax twice. They have a dedicated sales tax to transportation, and they'll tell you the reason one of their legislators told me last year, Kelly, I don't even have a Democrat to blame. The reason we're doing it is because we're going to outcompete you, and by investing in our infrastructure, we're positioning ourselves to be really competitive. And I would say to Coloradans, if we want to maintain our quality of life and the great jobs we have here, we have to make investments to do it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It's I did mention off air, we talked about our biggest threat and competitor, UDOT, right? The Utah Department of Transportation. And one of the nice things about their city that they have is that the mountains are very accessible. Yeah, it's 45 minutes from the Salt Lake City airport to get to the mountains. And so that's something that is really tough for us to compete with.
Well, we have way better snow. We have way better ski areas.
I'm not doubting Colorado. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I am on board with you 100%. And I think we have a lot of we do have a lot of the same mentality about the collaboration. I feel like Utah has that as well. But we have the gusto. I think we're gonna totally outdo them in tourism this year.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Well, the big difference between Colorado and Utah is that, you know, we have the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, and Utah was able to raise taxes for transportation with their General Assembly.
Yeah.
We need to go to the voters and ask the voters to raise taxes, so it's a little more cumbersome process, and that is why we're taking this question to the voters, and we're going to present our case, and hopefully we'll be successful this fall.
I don't know that you're going to have to present much of a case. Just ask them to come to the meeting in downtown Denver at rush hour time, right? Let's see how many show up on time. Case dismissed. So we have about 5 minutes here, and this has been a great conversation about transportation. I do want to touch a little bit again on the housing, right? We have the Central 70 project coming up. They're breaking ground, I believe, at the end of this month, if not early next month, to start on that. And I'm very excited for that project. I don't know that you've seen any videos. We definitely have that on our radio page. You just search Central 70 Project, and we did a show with them last December, actually, and we got to see this beautiful video, what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. But housing, right? It's something that we're passionate about. Do you guys have any insight right now on how that's looking on your end?
Yeah, I mean, this is, sort of the downside of success, right, is we're seeing a median home price like we've never experienced here.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple of things we've done that are positioning us well. We got some changes to the state law and won some court cases that I think are going to put us back in business where at least condos and multifamily. And why is that important? It's important for two reasons. One, our investment in transportation fast tracks in 2004 really laid a vision around how you develop our region around those transit nodes with increased density, and which really means condos. And yet we haven't put for sale condos in those places yet because of our laws that were in place. So I feel like we're positioned now exactly how we should be to have those developments occur. Condos also allow you to begin the home ownership journey with a less expensive product and get you in the business. The last thing I would say as a business community around housing is the way we as Americans build wealth. We move into the middle class is through home ownership. It's the number one asset that most of our families will ever own. It provides incredible stability. As a matter of fact, for families who own homes, their kids do better in school, have less health issues, so we improve health outcomes, educational outcomes. Home ownership is a great strategy, and I think we have to focus on not just affordability and rents, and I really believe we have to move toward how do we help people get into the home and what are the barriers. And there is a lot of work happening in the private sector that's breaking through some of those barriers. That's kind of exciting and moving people into home ownership.
That is exciting. I've mentioned a few times I moved here about 8 years ago, and my goal, I'm gonna talk about my age a little bit, but my goal was to own a home by 30, and that could not happen. About 28, the market really flooded, and I saw my dreams go out the window. I'm hoping for 32. I'm slowly getting there, but they just keep rising, and it's an issue, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you what is going to make the problem much worse. There are some who think that if somehow they put laws, whether it be at the local level or the state level, to limit the growth of building, it will limit the growth of our population, and all that will do is it'll make the prices of homes skyrocket.
Exactly.
And it'll make the problem worse. The way that we're going to address this growth problem, the best way for us to address this growth problem is to invest in transportation.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you get people moving. It's going to work like clockwork, right? We're going to get more people here. We're going to be able to get those tourism dollars, bless you, in here. And, we're going to have people hopefully invest in these homes. And I think that's lovely. We're well on our way. Any last words for us in these last couple minutes on, we already talked about what we would say on the floor if we were there.
Yeah.
Any last hopeful words for our voters out there?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd say vote yes in November on a sales tax to fund transportation. I'd also tell you we're continuing this conversation at the Chamber in a lot of places. But on May 11th with the governor, we have the annual State of the State event, and we'd love to have people join us. It's lunch, 11 to 1:30, and you can go to denverchamber.org and learn more about State of the State and see if you'd like to join us for more conversation on mobility and transportation.
Love that. Any last words for you?
I'll just say to your listeners that our members are hiring. So if they're interested in a career in construction, they can check out Construction Careers Now.
Yeah.
There's a website, buildcolorado.com, and check that out.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you both on today. I'm very excited for this bill. We're definitely going to get it passed. I have every hope that we will, and I just know it's going to pass for us. It's been great talking transportation with you. Yes, for sure.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio. Thank you.